Hey everyone, welcome to Unveiling Beauty. We're so excited to have you guys back with us tonight. Ammon, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Nick. You know, the sun is shining here in Chicago, finally. We're hitting springtime, which makes me remember that I need to make sure that I put my sunscreen on because I got to protect my
Clever.
skin, right?
Clever little angle there.
Because I mean, what's today's topic about, right?
That's right. Today is all about skin. So, as we start to think about re-entering the workplace, coming through this pandemic, we want to make sure that we take the steps to really make sure that our guests and our associates are safe as we go back into this. And who better to partner with than our number one brand in skin services, Dermalogica. So, we are super excited to go deeper, no pun intended, into the skin conversation and welcome Aurelian Lis. How are you today?
Oh, very well. Thank you. I'm also privileged to be in a sunny part of the country in Los Angeles today.
I love it. So we're all in the sun, Florida, Los Angeles, Chicago. So Aurelian, you and I have had countless conversations about all of the work that's been done to really get back into skin services. So why don't we start by talking about some of the things that Dermalogica is doing during this time?
Yeah, so I mean, we got a global business, right, at Dermalogica, and we're privileged to be in 88 countries, depending on how you count them. And some of those countries have already reopened, right? Sort of Germany, Sweden, some places like Australia, even some of our partners never even closed. So, it's an interesting time. But what we've seen is that in the States we've got some retail going, obviously now again. Some services, but not that much yet.
Right.
In the end, it's what I look at is business is a bit slower than it's been, but it was exploding until March. So we were it was like running at full speed and then suddenly slowing down, which I think is very true across the industry. Yeah. Digital at this point, as you guys know, is very, very strong. But, and that's great. And I'm really celebrating that. And the teams, who are doing that are obviously doing good work. But at the same time, we're a physical company, right? We're all about human touch. We're about services. We're about that really intimate human connection. And so what we've been spending the most of my time since the safer at home orders have come out has been like, how can we get that human connection back? Because we're just not willing to give it up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I know when I think about Dermalogica and I think about the beauty, we've taken a lot of partners on, medical experts. Both companies have taken medical experts, really partnered with pandemic experts to understand what the new normal will look like. I know that we're looking at things everywhere from, sanitation protocols and masks and shields and gloves and extra ways that we could really safeguard our associates and our guests. But I know you guys have worked on a very robust plan as well. And we're going to be, between the two partnerships, really adapting some of those best practices. Let's talk about some of that.
Yeah, I think, that it's been an iterative process. When a crisis hits, the first thing you do is okay, you assess where you are and you say, okay, you can basically start from what you prepared before. So that's you start working on digital consultations and virtual, and then you do that. Very quickly, we realized we were dealing with something here on COVID that a lot of people didn't know that much on. And, yes, the newspapers and CNN and all the wonderful news outlets were talking about it, but we wanted to get some science behind it. So we went out through connections in CDC and at Johns Hopkins. We started working together with a very impressive epidemiologist. I've always had a soft spot for epidemiologists because they're like the detectives in the science arena, right? And if you ever watch a film, there's a film called "And the Band Played On" about the heroes in that film are the epidemiologists. It's a really impressive thing. And the same thing here is said, okay, we need an epidemiologist to help guide us. And so we hosted a webinar. It was a global webinar, and it probably added a lot of gray hair and a few years to my life. But in the way that we got it going, and we basically started talking about the facts behind it. What's a fomite? Why is it relevant? How how can you transmit it? How can you not transmit it? And it became very clear when we took the perspective of the professional skincare therapist that actually that part of it was not really well known. And yes, people knew the general stuff, but not, okay, how does that relate to doing a skincare treatment?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we set about with them and others, and you were involved as well, and and a lot of people had called in experts, which was so wonderful. And we just really set about to saying, can we get on one piece of paper some principles together that if we do these over and above all the other good stuff we've ever been doing, we know we'll be safe enough to be doing safe treatments that are good for, where the guest is safe and where the therapist is safe. And that's sort of where it came to, right?
Yeah. No, it's
great.
great.
I'm so sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was just going to say, I think that one of the things that I find is most important is even just being on. Thank you so much for joining us on this show, because I think right now it's most important that that leaders of big organizations and leaders of companies that provide services that do require touch are getting out in front and are getting online and talking about what they're doing and the protocols that they're taking for safety and sanitation and health, and making sure that the consumer and the guest that's out there is aware that those actions are being taken.
I think that is actually, for me, it's a sort of role of leadership. And the way I feel about it for Dermalogica to lead is I'm very interested in this concept of active safety.
Yeah.
And active safety for me means, you don't just sort of wait for the situation to become safer by waiting, let's say, an extra 3 weeks or an extra 6 months. But what you do is saying, what do I need to do? This pandemic's with us for a while. And how can I get that done? And you try and also sort of help those people who are sort of coming up with rules and regulations, which basically are nonsensical, right? I mean, I've had people and legislators sort of tell us, oh, I got a solution for this industry. When you do a facial treatment, make sure you keep the mask on for the whole time. And I mean, nobody would tell me that when I go to a restaurant, you're not allowed to, that you have to eat your food through your mask. I mean, it's nonsensical. Right. But because people don't know what we're doing, that's where we have to step up. And we have to make sure that they're scientifically based. We're staking our credibility on this. And that hence why we use the experts and the forums. And we make sure that they're doable as well, so they're not ridiculous, so they can be implemented. And it's been wonderful to see how many people have then jumped onto this and then come on it and said, yeah, all right, if you say, if we all together say that these extra 12 principles mean that I'm going to be safer for my guest, I'm willing to put the extra half an hour into learning about it. And then when it comes to and when I open, I'm going to put the extra effort into making sure I follow those. Yeah. That's basically what it is, right?
I chuckled a minute ago because I was thinking to myself, and I don't know about you, but never in my career did I ever think I would be partnering with pandemic experts and epidemiologists to help run my business. I mean, like, that's how, this is so unprecedented. But the biggest thing, and I know this is important for your company as well as ours, we're retailers. We know how to operationalize a really good retail environment. We know how to create amazing services. But this moment in time, we didn't want to do on our own. We wanted to make sure we brought the right partners in, all of our brand partners, all of the medical experts, all of the epidemiologists, because this is about people's lives and keeping them safe, no matter what. At the end of the day, safety first and anything that we do. So that's why I think it has been very eye-opening, and it has been great to have people who can give you educated guidance, to your point, to make sure that we're doing this in the thoughtful way that is going to keep everybody really, really safe. And I think that's the most important thing.
I do see the industry coming together in that way, which is, which I'm, impressed by. And, early on we were doing something to get sort of sanitizers to a UCLA Health. And we managed to find a way that they weren't being extorted for money. They were getting them at cost, and we needed help. And actually L'Oreal stepped in and offered the bottles for free. And, cool. It's that sort of industry comparison, getting together and doing the right stuff. And on this one, it's as well, we left all the webinars we've done, the things that the Clean Touch certification program that we started is open to anybody in the industry. Not just Dermalogica clients, hair as well as skin. And it's sort of And it really is something that we say, all of us together are better at this. And therefore, it's also important that it's compatible, right? So one of the people we also worked with, for example, in making sure we were developing this, was we work with a chain of massage studios, I would say. And they brought in some very good medical experts for the massage end of the business.
Right.
And you have to make sure that what we're saying, what they're doing, actually is compatible, because otherwise, what's the poor person in the middle meant to do? And that's what we've managed to achieve with you guys as well, which is we're really quite grateful for.
No, that's fantastic. So talk to me about the clean certification. Talk to the followers about exactly what this is, because I think you guys have really done a really amazing job, and you came to the forefront with this clean certification pretty quickly at the start of all this. And I think a lot of people are trying to catch up now, but you guys did it really well. And I want to share more about that.
Well, I appreciate those words. I mean, that's very kind. It was very quick. And again, in a lot of these things in this pandemic, we've been sort of pivoting at sort of so high speed. I think I'm doing a pirouette, not a pivot. But within a few weeks, we had assembled the experts and put the principles on paper. And then we launched this thing called Clean Touch Certification. And I can tell you something about the principles in a second. But essentially, it's the 12 principles that if you follow those above and beyond the sanitation guidelines, your licensing guidelines, your local health authority, it's beyond that, then you get certified. We have a training module, which takes maybe 20, 30 minutes, and there's a test at the end to make sure, and then you're certified. I mean, we're shocked by the response. We've had, as of today, it's about 2 weeks since we've launched it, we've had about 26,000 people enroll. And sort of about 23,000 complete the certification and make it through the program. 23,000 people have dedicated and completed and made a pledge. It took them half an hour to do. That's incredible. Yeah. And for actually people listening, if you haven't done it yet, I really suggest you do it. I'm glad to say I passed as well. But it's simple. It's dermalogica.com/inthistogether. So dermalogica.com, in this together. You can quickly sign up. As said, it's open to everybody, and you go through it. But I can talk about some of the some of the principles, maybe a bit surprising. Some of them are the ones that you would expect from our industry, which in the end has always been an industry of real professionalism in terms of sanitation and licensing requirements. We're not a fly-by-night industry.
No.
We've never been that, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, when you think about the principles, I don't know. Actually, I can throw a couple out.
Throw a couple out there. I'm sure there's a few people that are eager, but save some of them to make sure they go to watch the certification.
Well. I was just going to say, to give you a little break there, Aurelian, I would like to make sure that just the way that you challenged everybody, it doesn't take much time. That I hope that our viewers, especially those of you that are affiliates and associates with Ulta Beauty, will make sure that you take the time to do that. That will be a requirement that we require of our associates before they go back into work, in addition to some of our other implications or other safety measures as well. So if you can dive into a couple of those, but I just wanted to make that known that if they haven't done it already, they're going to be asked to do it before they come back into work full time. So they might as well get it out of the way.
The way that the principles are built up is very much think of the journey through the skin service treatment. And as said, a lot of them are very, very applicable to hair as well. The first thing you want to do is pre-screen, right? You want to make sure that anybody who comes in is healthy. What does that mean? Well, for the therapist, it means you check their temperature and ask that they're free from symptoms. For your customer, it means you also ask that they're free from symptoms. And, we were scientific about the symptoms. And actually, the CDC has a list of what are the symptoms associated with COVID. And those are the ones we asked for, like fever, sore throat, but also the one, which was an interesting one, which is the loss of sense of taste and smell, right? And I know a lot of my European friends, some of them, caught COVID quite earlier, and very much that was the first and the earliest indicator that they suddenly realized, they're suddenly their husbands and their wives food started tasting a lot better than it had been before. And they were like, whoa, what is this? Why have I lost my sense, right? And it's sure enough, a week later or so, they developed the rest of the symptoms. So, and asking that in a personal way as well, rather than, this isn't a legal thing that we're trying to do as much as everybody's trying to be safe. So if you ask somebody in a genuine voice, look, are you free from all these symptoms? And if they say no, you don't say, look, I don't want to see you again. You say, could you come back in 2 weeks? Can you come back in 2 weeks? So that pre-screening, and also when you're thinking about pre-screening, for associates, we also, and that's what just happened to me as I walked into this facility. My temperature today is 97.9. I was just checked on the way in. Now, temperature checking together with a symptom list is good. Temperature checking by itself isn't enough. Mm-hmm. And I think with time, these might change. Like, for example, there's another one called pulse oximetry, where you basically work out how much oxygen's in the blood. That, I think, might come in and be one of those screening things when the science gets a bit better, but it isn't now. And that's one of these sort of ideas behind it.
No, I agree. I agree. It's interesting because I think as much as we know is as much as we're still learning, right?
Yes, and that's the other thing. That's, I think, a reason that a lot of people didn't really take action, and it was so hard to get people, to get the principles together. It was because everybody is saying, well, let me just sit back and wait and see what happens. And, really what it comes down to is, no, we can take a decision now. We can take the best information now, and then we'll just be aware that as science changes, as the world changes, we will change. It's okay. It's okay not to be perfect. Yeah. We always say, we want to make progress. We don't have to be perfect. And, and we don't like to not be perfect. So when our mic fails on a international webinar, it's not my favorite day, but I still want to do that webinar. I'm going to do it again until I get it right. And then these things. And now some of these are sort of time and tested, right? And some of them also built on the ideas that were in the industry. So, for example, one of the big things is wearing masks. Mm-hmm. We believe in the area, everybody should be wearing masks. So, the guest is meant to be wearing a mask, and definitely the therapist is wearing a mask. And so, that's our starting point. Now, when you go for the treatment, as I said before, you're going to have to take off the mask, as the guest has to take off the mask. So at that point, you've got this imbalance a bit, right? So you've got source control that the therapist can't infect the guest because she's still got a mask on, but you don't have barrier control, which is why at that point we bring in the shield as well.
Right.
So whenever one person doesn't have a mask, the other person has both a mask and a shield. Exactly. And so that's sort of the way we do it. And our masks aren't anything new. We didn't invent the mask by any, maybe it's an Asian invention, but probably, really it's an invention from 100 years ago, isn't it? So,
right.
And what we can say is look, okay, what is important with a mask? And, one of the examples that people have said to us is hey, can I still steam the client? Can I still use steam during a treatment? And actually the answer to that, speaking to the epidemiologists, is it comes back to the mask. If the mask stays clean and dry being really important, it's effective and it's fine. But if somebody's getting steamed in the room and your mask is now getting wet, it's no longer good enough. That's not effective anymore. Right. So that's how you know it. And so that's the sort of principle-based safety that we're trying to instill in the industry, because then people can sort of make their own decisions for their own circumstances, their own setup, where is what, that sort of thing, and then push through on it.
Yeah, no, well said. And, it's so important to take all of these steps. And that's why, as Ammon said, we have taken the Clean Touch certification and put it into part of the 3-day training that our associates will go through as they come back into the business. And something that I thought was really interesting, as we've been building out all of these PPE protocols for hair and brow and skin, when you're looking at it all, it's a lot of steps and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of stuff. And, it made me pause and I'm like, oh, how is this going to feel going back into the business? And I will tell you, we're taking a phased approach, starting with hair and then moving into brow and skin as we layer on our services. But now that some of our hair salons have opened up, we have been getting a lot of notes from the field, from the stylists reaching back out to us. And the one thing that they said was, I was nervous coming back to work, but when I seen the steps that Ulta Beauty put in place, to make sure I was protected and my guest was protected, I totally stopped worrying. And then I realized that some of my friends were telling me that their salons weren't going through the same kind of PPE protocols. So it made me feel reassured that, okay, this is good. They see the importance of this. They understand that this is a way to keep everybody protected, whether maybe not the most convenient, the most protective way to keep everybody safe during this time. So I was reassured with that.
I think that's a very important thing as well that you're sort of talking, because there's also the level of confidence that the guest has in what we're doing. And so, part of the certification, I think, also came from the idea that when you're at the end of it, we want to be able to sort of, so to speak, give you a seal. That can be a window decal, that can be on the store locator, that can be a pin that the therapist is wearing saying, I'm Clean Touch certified. And then you do things like across your industry to make sure that people understand it. The thing we were thinking about before we launched was like, I don't know if you ever go to many high-end hotels, probably not now anymore, right?
Not right now.
But I was always fascinated over the years because I sort of have attention to detail, which is maybe bordering on the OCD. But I look at the toilet roll, and you often see in these hotels that people have folded at the end of the toilet
into
roll.
a triangle.
In a triangle.
Right.
Now, that doesn't make the toilet paper any better. I mean, it definitely does nothing. But what it does do, it signals that somebody has cleaned and sanitized the toilet and taken care of the toilet paper.
Yeah.
And, those sort of signals are incredibly important throughout. So, whether it's, the sanitizer on the way in the front, the fact that when you start a treatment, don't wash, like a therapist shouldn't be washing their hands in the back, coming in, not washing that, and saying, don't worry, I just washed them over there. Now that's what my 3-year-old kid does. Yeah, I wash my hand. No,
exactly. Exactly.
No, you didn't feel Pinocchio. It is like, let's wash them here. And that sort of is a wonderful, those are the sort of signals that people want. And especially if you combine them with this heartfelt human love and human connection, which is, when it comes down to it, such a huge reason why anybody's getting a treatment. We're getting it just to be touched, It is like, especially after all this time alone, and just think about all the single people out as well as so many of the married people. They're just not getting touched enough, and they come to, the idea that somebody is going to be touching their face for 30 minutes is a very human, very important, and instrumental thing that we do for people's public health, I think, and that is what they're coming in from. And and you can do that in a really sort of good way whilst saying you're going to be safe. That's where we're going. And that's what we have to strive for.
Yeah, I agree. I want to pivot back to something you said earlier about technology and the consultation. So I don't know about you and your feeling on this, but I feel like right now more than ever, that's so important and it's so critical. And I feel like we've kind of fast forward 3 years to where the world maybe would be being what's the word I'm looking for? Technology savvy, so to speak. People are getting better at it. So how does that translate into skin in your mind?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my background in physics, I studied atomic physics and laser optics in university. So, I mean, I've spent most of my life wondering, if my studies had anything to do with my job, right? So it's quite nice that they're actually related sometimes. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've really been on a digital transformation anyway, because the idea is even when the human touch is so big, you can augment it by things you do with technology. And what we've seen really with this pandemic, and particularly the safer at home, that everything we were doing was turbocharged. So we've been doing education, distance education, we call it de-streaming, for about 2-3 years. The class enrollment sort of quadrupled overnight, sort of thing. But we also do something called face mapping, which is essentially, it's this facial skin analysis, which is the kickoff for pretty much any treatment or any discussion that the expert has with a guest. And there is an online version of that called at facemapping.me, but it's embedded in Ulta as well, in the ulta.com website. And essentially, you just pull up your cell phone. And if you go to either of the websites through alta.com or to facemapping.me, you take a photo, it does an analysis of all the things that we would be seeing normally. And what it does is what's most exciting for me is it gives you some results, but it initiates a chat. It initiates a conversation, either in a live chat or in other ways as well. But it initiates that conversation between the expert and the guest, and that's cool. And that's one of those sort of marker pieces of technology that I think has changed the skincare industry. I think it's really interesting for us because we use algorithms then to suggest some products, but then we have the experts say, okay, I'll agree with this, and this is what I recommend for you. So it's both the human expert, and the AI expert.
Right.
And the interesting thing is really when it augments what's happening. It's not really, technology is never there to replace the human interaction. It doesn't
to
work.
enhance the experience.
It's to give people tools. It's like in the end, a doctor with a thermometer is better than a doctor without a thermometer, right?
Right.
And it's very much in the same way that we like to bring technology into this industry. And, the great thing is that we've seen, people do it and take it up and, upload those photos. The one thing I would say is that we do analysis of a lot of people's photos when they, because we're all looking at their skin. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, when people are taking photos, they're looking so serious. So if I do content analysis on that, like most people are looking, I want to see the smiling people. I try to do an analysis. It's all personally unidentifiable, and so it's sort of in a map. But you can sort of say, you put it through machines and so work out what's happening here, what's happening there. Are skin concerns bigger in one area than the other? Mm-hmm. We put in what is about, do people smile more in one area than another? So anybody I suggest you upload your photo. And when you upload your photo, this isn't a passport agency, smile.
I like it. And I will tell you, as obviously working for Ulta Beauty, I have a lot of products. So I've used the skin mapping tool to understand what should I really be using, because sometimes more is not more. So it's been very helpful.
I've used it too. I love it. Love it. Love it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. And that's another one of those things, it keeps iterating. I think we're on version 6 or something like now. And we just, people don't often see it, but we change the back end, we change the front end, we put new technology. Also, there's new ways to make it easier for the therapist to use it as a database so that they have a good understanding of what their clients need. So those sort of things are in there as well, which is quite cool for us.
Really helpful. Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, Aurelian, I really appreciate you taking the time to really share the work that you guys have been doing, the work that we're doing together. I'm excited to hopefully very, very soon get our estheticians back to work. I know there's so much pent-up demand. The guests can't wait to get back in. So I look forward to that day when we're all back.
Wait. Obviously, you can tell, I'm excited about this. I've spoken to therapists who have also said, it's not just the guest who's looking for the touch. It's like, I enjoy giving the touch. And
that's for sure.
I think that's a big part of it. It is our industry. We do need to do it safely. But as I said earlier, this idea of active safety, let's actively work really, really hard to make sure we've got the best safety possible. But then because that lets us move forward as opposed to just stand still. So cool. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
We're big supporters of your Back in Touch campaign, so thank you so much.
Very much. And if anything, we hope that all the estheticians watching feel confident that we're taking the steps to get back into business in a really safe way. And for all the consumers who maybe are looking at this, understand that, we're looking at your best interest. And don't get frustrated that you can't go in for a facial right now. Head over to alta.com and buy all your Dermalogica products. So,
work that face now.
For sure. All right. Thank you, my friend.
This is what it gives you. All right. Take care.
Take the time.
Take care. We'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Ammon, do you have all your Dermalogica products ready to go?
They're ready, lined up. I'm going to go right now and get my Clean Touch certification.
Good.
And then, face mapped, ready to go. Now that it's sunny, I'm in good shape.
There you go.
What
You
a
need
wealth
to
of
put,
knowledge, though. Like, I mean,
yeah,
that was such good information. I feel like I was mostly just absorbing and just learning all the things that they're doing, just to make sure that our consumers and our guests and our therapists all know that they are putting safety first, just like we are at Ulta Beauty. And it's great to know that Dermalogica, such a strong partner of ours,
yeah.
is going to the same priorities, same, putting the same priorities of guests and operators and therapists and service providers at the forefront, just like we do at Ulta Beauty.
Yeah, no, I agree very much. I agree. All right, Eamon, let's talk about what's happening next for the later part of this week.
Next week, well, we only have one more day left this week. So,
That's right.
Friday's episode, we are going to be talking to some very well known hairdressers in the industry. We appropriately named the episode Best Hair, Biggest Names, because we have two celebrity hairstylists on the show, Justin Anderson and Cesar Ramirez, who have done countless celebrities. And Nick, you and I have had the privilege of working with them both. They're not only outstanding in what they do, but they're incredibly cool guys, and I cannot wait for them to share some of the tips and steps that they've gotten to get to where they are in this status in their careers. So it'll be
Yeah,
great.
really great guys. We look forward to seeing them on Friday. So make sure to tune back in Friday evening to see everything that has to do with celebrity hair. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you Friday. Have a good night, everyone.